Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that are being done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
Hello everyone, I'm Sergeant Jamie Cox, Public Information Officer for the Mesa Police Department. This critical incident community briefing will provide you with information about an officer-involved shooting that occurred in Mesa. We will share relevant video footage, evidence, and police procedures related to this case. This will provide you with Department conducts thorough use of not draw any conclusive facts are known, and the investigation is 911 call. We need to warn you, and the video may contain strong language. Viewer discretion is strongly advised, especially for young children and sensitive viewers.
On August 21st, 2022, Mesa police officers were called to assist the Department of Public Safety with locating a wanted fugitive out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, 36-year-old Kevin McKinney. McKinney was wanted for a homicide that occurred in Albuquerque on August 20th, 2022. McKinney also had a probation violation warrant in Colorado. Albuquerque police believe that McKinney was...
All right, so they provided just a little bit of information about this guy. I wish they could have provided more, but they didn't. So I'm going to provide some more to you because I think this is kind of important to know, because there's also some talking points within this as well. This article comes from Albuquerque Journal by Aubrey Hovey. It's spelled H-O-V-E-Y, so I don't know how it's pronounced. That's what I'm assuming. I'll skip the first paragraph, 2 paragraphs. According to a criminal complaint and arrest warrant affidavit filed in Metropolitan Court, McKinney is charged with an open count of murder after allegedly shooting and killing Corey Langford in a parking lot at the Villas at Uptown on Indian School, NE. The complaint says Langford was shot in the chest while sitting in a vehicle. He was pronounced dead after being taken to the hospital. Detectives learned McKinney was engaged in a multi-state crime spree in which he stole a gun during a burglary that was later used to kill the victim. In the complaint, McKinney is described as fleeing assault charges in Wisconsin, having an active felony warrant in Colorado for failure to comply with child exploitation charges, and stealing the gun used in the shooting from a pawn shop in Nebraska. Responding officers were able to review surveillance video recorded at the complex. In the video, officers saw a person exit a dark SUV, run toward a Toyota, and appear to fire into the Toyota, the complaint states. The video also shows the SUV driving away from the apartment complex. A witness provided Langford's tablet to detectives after the incident. Through investigation and interviews, it was corroborated a tablet was used by Corey Langford in which he had a conversation via text messaging with Kevin McKinney about trading guns. During that conversation, Corey tells Kevin he does not want to do the deal, and an argument ensues. According to the complaint, Albuquerque police tracked McKinney to Arizona using cell phone ping data, blah, 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 and that's where this rest of the video will go into. So, 2 talking points here. One, meeting people to buy things off the internet, and safe storage of firearms. So let's talk about meeting people on the internet. There are some crazy-ass motherfuckers out there. There really is. And meeting people on the internet for, buying things from them, or it's a dating kind of thing, you have to use some caution there. There have been lots of cases where people have created fake accounts, used fake names, and listed something for sale online, and told someone, hey, I got this thing for sale, and usually it's an item that costs a lot of money. Let's say, for example, a newer version of an iPhone, and they'll post pictures of that, and they'll list it for an extremely cheap price. Something to entice people to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go meet this person for this. They'll set up the time, the place, and then that person goes there to, buy the thing, and then boom, they're met by a person who's robbing them now. Happens a lot. More than what you think. So, things you can do to keep yourself protected from that. One, if you're using Facebook and you're using the Facebook Marketplace, look at that person's profile. If it was made that year, the current year that you're doing stuff, be very cautious. If the profile's locked down and you can't see a whole lot of stuff, skip it. It's not a good. It's just the juice is just not worth the squeeze, in my opinion. That's a red flag right there. If it's a profile that it's several years old and some of it is open and you can kind of look through their profile pictures and see some stuff and they don't look like a creep or anything like that, then you could proceed forward, but also proceed forward with some caution. And there's going to be some extra things to do there. If you're using other things like Craigslist, I don't know if a whole lot of people use Craigslist anymore. It's still up and running, I believe. Obviously, there's no profile to look at on there, so it's going to be really hard to research a person or anything like that. Facebook Marketplace is a good tool to use because you can kind of research that person before you try to make a deal to meet them. Once you've done your research, the time and place to go meet up needs to be considered. There's a lot of police agencies across the nation who have designated places on their property, usually the front parking lot, for people to be able to meet to make online transactions. They've also, made this known to, custodial exchanges as well. So you got like divorced parents who drop the kids off to one another. There's a lot before, internet stuff was going on. This was being done at different places across the country. You got divorced mom and dad. Their relationship isn't so great. It's kind of rocky. One accuses the other often of stuff. Sometimes people like that would go meet up at police departments and go to the front parking lot, and that's where they exchange the kid. That way someone is less likely to show their ass and cause a scene because they're outside of a police department, right? So online internet sales came about, and slowly places here and there, you started seeing it being a more common thing. And some agencies have, they put up signs. Hey, this is where, people who make internet transactions can come meet and make those transactions happen. That would be the first place I'd recommend going to. And if the person does not want to go to the police department, then there's probably a reason why. And that's reason enough for you to cancel and do not proceed forward with that person. If you're not going to be meeting in the police department, then some other public place, I think, should be done. Somewhere like a Walmart parking lot, something like that, where there's other witnesses, and there's a more likelihood of you being watched or the whole scene being watched by surveillance cameras. Now, those are not going to stop anything from happening. They're just going to record what's going on, and that could be for your benefit. So if you're a guy, and you're meeting a girl, and then the girl's crazy and she makes up crazy shit. Well, if you're both on camera at the Walmart parking lot and it shows nothing going on, then obviously that's a crazy bullshit allegation being made by a crazy person, and your ass will be covered at that point. Same on the reverse of that. I do not recommend at all that you go to someone's house. That's just, or have people come to your house. That's just an invitation for issues, especially if you can't do any research on the person. Like if it's a Craigslist kind of thing, you can't research that person at all. If it's a Facebook Marketplace, you can kind of get a gauge on a person just by looks. Everyone says you can't judge a book by its cover. Bullshit, you can't. You can very well judge a book by its cover. And there's just certain indicators, that you'd be looking at and you'd be like, you know what? I don't think I want to invite this person over to my house, right? So if you're looking through the profile picture of someone and, you see a Buick LeSabre in the background with the Walmart spinners on the rims and they got fucking neck and face tattoos, that's a pretty good sign that you don't want to invite that person over to your house and let them know where you live. And they come into your house to buy your couch, and then they see all your expensive electronics in there, or, they see the whatever, all right? Like, you don't want people like that coming into your house or knowing where you live. So if you can use the Facebook Marketplace, that's a really good way to screen the people coming over. As far as, this doesn't really relate to the dating stuff, but there's even been some crazy stuff that's happened to people on the dating apps as well. And you need to use caution with that. There are some psycho motherfuckers out there. There really are. So you've got to be very vigilant when dealing with people on the internet, and you just don't know who you're dealing with. So that was one talking point. The other talking point is safe storage of guns. So this dude broke into a pawn shop in Nebraska and stole a gun. What's that tell me? The pawn shop wasn't keeping that gun in a safe when they should have been. So safes can be defeated. That's a given. Anything can be defeated. Fort Knox could be defeated. You just got to have some time. You're just not going to have a whole lot of time at Fort Knox because you're going to have a bunch of armed people coming after you within a matter of minutes. So you take those out of the equation. Say there was no one there to come stop you. You would, after a certain amount of time, be able to get into Fort Knox, right? Anything you can get into. You just need time. So gun safes, they just buy you time. They can be defeated. But because they take time to get into, it deters people from staying there long enough to get into it. So if you're a gun shop and you have a safe, then you should most likely have an alarm system. And when someone breaches the building and comes inside, that sets the alarm off. That sets the timer. They're not going to have a whole lot of time after that alarm's activated to sit there and fuck with that safe. The police will be there too quick. If that pawn shop had taken their guns that were on display and put them in a safe, it is very unlikely that this dude would have been able to steal that gun. When you look at private citizens who own guns, this is how guns are stolen. They just leave them out. At home, when a person leaves home and they go to work, they leave their gun out in the open. Or they leave it in a drawer, which is almost the same as being out in the open. They leave it on the nightstand, they leave it in the nightstand drawer, they leave it on the coffee table, in the coffee table drawer, sitting on the top shelf of their closet, or they might have it tucked in between the mattress of their bed. Or they might have it in their sock drawer. Those are places where burglars look. They break in the house, they ransack, they go through drawers, they ransack the rooms. If you've got a gun sitting in your nightstand in the drawer, they're going to open that door and they're going to find that gun. And while you're gone for 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day, you can't do shit about preventing a person from A, kicking in your fucking door, and B, you can't do anything about stopping the person from opening your nightstand drawer and then taking your gun out. Because you're not there. People who leave their guns in their cars and then go to work, or they go into the store and they're gone for a good length amount of time. You can't do anything to prevent a person from smashing your window, unlocking your door, and then reaching into your middle console that doesn't even have a lock on it, or reaching into your glove box that you didn't lock or it doesn't have a lock on it, or reaching under your seat and taking your gun. You can't do anything about that. You can't stop them. And if you forget to lock your damn car, you cannot physically stop a person from opening the door and doing all those things to get your gun if you're not in the car. lawful gun owners are their own worst enemy when it comes to ensuring their rights from being infringed upon. And what I mean by that is all these people who negligently leave their guns laying around and they do not have them secured, they are making them easily accessible to criminals. And that's where the bulk of all these guns used in street crimes are coming from. They're coming from guns that have been stolen from law-abiding people. People who were able to legally go to a gun store and buy a gun. And they were just negligent in how they kept it. So when these guns are stolen and used in street crimes, guess what? Those are statistics. Those are numbers that are collected and used by anti-gun groups to use against us. That's what I mean by we are our own worst enemy. We are literally giving the anti-gun crowd more ammo to use against us. Why are people leaving guns at home and leaving them in their car? I think it's mostly because of bullshit gun-free zone laws and policies. You know, workplaces won't allow their employees to carry guns. Certain places, it's just illegal to have guns at all. So people are law-abiding. They follow the rules, right? So they just don't go into those places with a gun. They leave their gun behind somewhere. Well, if we know these law-abiding people are leaving their guns behind because they're following rules, then we should make a rule that says if you're going to leave your gun behind, you need to store it safely. You need to put it in a fucking safe. I don't think that's too unreasonable, and I think that is actually probably one of the only common sense gun laws that could be done that would actually make some kind of difference in reducing the amount of guns used by criminals. Because like I said, a lot of guns used by criminals are stolen guns. So if you don't have your gun on you, then it needs to be locked up. It needs to be made inaccessible and or inoperable to unauthorized people. Otherwise, people like this get them and then they go out and do stupid shit with them. Yeah, moving on.
Year-old Kevin McKinney. McKinney was wanted for a homicide that occurred in Albuquerque on August 20th, 2022. McKinney also had a probation violation warrant in Colorado. Albuquerque police believe that McKinney was in Mesa, based off of cell phone records which showed him in the area of Dobson and Baseline roads. His vehicle was described as a black 2011 Jeep Patriot, equipped with multiple spotlights and red and blue lights inside to mimic a police car. Just after 3:30 p.m., detectives spotted McKinney's vehicle parked outside of a pizzeria on Dobson and Baseline Road. Detectives confirmed that McKinney was sitting inside a cell phone store next to the pizzeria. McKinney left the wireless store and got into the driver's seat of his vehicle. That's when Mesa police officers positioned one of their vehicles at the back of McKinney's to contain him. Officers shouted for McKinney to exit the vehicle with his hands up. McKinney tried to back up into the police vehicle, and that's when officers fired less lethal beanbag rounds at his vehicle. McKinney quickly put his car in drive and drove forward, accelerating into the pizza restaurant. This is when multiple officers shot their duty weapons.
All right, so let's back this up real quick.
Less officers positioned one of their vehicles at the back of McKinney's to contain him.
All right, so they are rolling up in a minivan. Minivan go. This is a great piece of urban camouflage. You do not normally associate minivans with police, right? Like you normally associate those things with soccer moms, families, right? You don't associate a fucking SWAT team being in a minivan. Maybe a big bread truck van kind of thing, but not a minivan. So this is a great use of a minivan for urban camouflage. It allows them to get super close and capitalize on the element of surprise. They do have the the visor lights right here, and you can see the window tint visor to the front of it. Probably conceals it somewhat. You probably still see it if you study it long enough and stare at it long enough, but when the vehicle's rolling up, I mean, I highly doubt people are going to be paying that much attention to the minivan, and so they're not going to be looking that much at it. They're going to dismiss it. Now, if it was like a Crown Vic rolling in there or a Ford Explorer rolling in there, that's something that is most commonly used by police, so people will be paying attention to that, not a minivan. On top of that, with that being said, I'm actually kind of surprised that minivans are not used more often in law enforcement for actual patrol purposes, especially now with the fact that vehicles are becoming so much smaller, the interiors are becoming so much smaller, and the cage and all the equipment in it makes the cab portion of it extremely cramped. A van, to me, a minivan, to me, is really not that much different than an SUV, like a Ford Explorer or something like that. It's a little bit longer, and it's a little bit roomier, and those are big pluses to me. I think they could make a pretty good patrol vehicle out of a minivan. You could take that cage and move it a little bit further back away from the cab, and that would allow a lot more room up there, so the person driving it could actually lean the chair back a little bit and have a little bit more comfort and not be so cramped in the damn thing. More room that way to store stuff behind the seats. That way things could be more readily accessible, like rain gear and stuff like that. That could give good ample amount of space to put electronic stuff, for like all the wiring and everything, where all the control boxes for the sirens and stuff. Especially if you're using like a smart siren or something like that, and then the big control box needs to go somewhere. It can go right behind the passenger seat. That's all the relays and stuff could go to. That be more easily accessible or something like that. Printers and everything. That could be a place to be able to put a printer. Be able to put more storage space back there. Add rifle or whatever. It would just open up the cab area and make it a little bit more roomier and not so cramped, and it'd be a whole lot more comfortable for an officer to work out of for 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day. When you think about normal patrol cars right now, they're kind of cramped. Even for the SUVs like the Ford Explorer. The Ford Explorer is not that big of a vehicle. It's a kind of a mid-sized SUV. And so once you put a cage in there and you put all this equipment stuff in there, it still has a cramped feeling in there. And not all police are little tiny people, right? Like the only people who benefit in these vehicles are really tiny people. You're of good average size or even a little bit bigger, it's a cramped feeling in there. So actually kind of surprised minivans aren't utilized. Now I'm sure there's some people thinking, what the hell are you thinking about a minivan being used by police? Well, yeah. I have some odd views on different things, a little bit eccentric with stuff. But anyway, moving on from that. So minivans are used good in a clandestine manner. There was, what was it? Was it Seattle? I think it was Seattle. There was like a federal building or something, like a federal courthouse or some federal building that was being attacked by protesters, and I think they were like throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails at it and stuff like that, trying to set it on fire. And federal agents were around, and some of these federal agents were operating out of minivans. They would fucking like roll up on some people that they had identified as being a problem, and they would just jump right out of the minivan and pounce on these people and take them by surprise. And these people had no idea that this minivan coming towards them was full of a fucking SWAT team in it, essentially. So a minivan is great urban camouflage, and I think they're using it to their advantage very well here.
Officers shouted for McKinney to exit the vehicle with his hands up. McKinney tried to back up into the police vehicle, and that's when officers fired less lethal beanbag rounds at his vehicle. McKinney quickly put his car in drive and drove forward, accelerating into the pizza restaurant.
So the minivan pulls forward to block him in, and he starts to back up. That's when they fire the beanbags, and then he goes forward. Well, the driver is still in the vehicle, and as that suspect vehicle has moved forward, he has moved his vehicle forward as well. So we'll back that up so you can see it.
McKinney quickly put his car in drive and drove forward, accelerating into the pizza restaurant. This is when...
So why is that important? We'll start off by saying there is more risk involved in this tactic because you have a person in the driver's seat. So for this tactic to be effective, you need to have lethal cover out, which there is lethal cover out. So otherwise, it's very risky because you're in a car, and a car is not a great thing to be in a gunfight because it doesn't stop bullets very well. And if you're in the driver's seat of that car, then guess what? Your upper torso is fully exposed to the bad guy, especially like within this context right here. The bad guy could just turn around, start firing at the back windshield, and the officer sitting in the driver's seat, whatever past the line of sight of this dashboard is within view. So it'll be his upper chest and his head. Bullets are going to go straight through that windshield, no fucking problem whatsoever. So that's why it's important to have lethal cover outside the vehicle when employing this kind of tactic. But this tactic is great because when you think about vehicle tactics and being able to ram vehicles and get purchase points and move vehicles out of the way, you need distance. You need distance to build up your momentum. And if this van was far enough back where it was initially at, this guy going so far forward, he would be able to cut the wheel and then hit it in reverse and completely bypass this vehicle altogether. Or if he wasn't able to completely bypass it, he would be able to ram into it and knock it out of his fucking way. He will hit that vehicle, physically move it, and slide it out of the way because he was able to build up momentum and hit it with enough force and velocity to move it out of the way. When you close the gap and you keep it bumper to bumper, you remove their ability to do that because they cannot gain any distance at all to build that momentum up and ram your ass out of the way. So this is a good tactic to keep somebody pinned in, but it's risky because you're stuck in the driver's seat and they can fire through and hit you, and that sucks because you're just your dick's hanging out in the wind essentially at that point. So you got to have good lethal cover to try and employ a tactic like this. So when he backed up into the van, they didn't use lethal force at that point. They used beanbags in an attempt to break out the windows. That's a decent tactic. If you can penetrate the windows and break them, then you can start injecting some type of irritant into the vehicle to encourage them to get out. So you could fire beanbags at the windows, break the windows, get those knocked out of the way, and then you simply just pepper spray into the vehicle. You could take a pepper ball gun and start firing into that vehicle and fill that vehicle up with pepper powder. That would encourage them to want to get the hell out. Or that would allow you to maneuver closer and fire a taser through that open window and hit them with some degree of success. Now, a lot of cars nowadays come with window tint on them. And window tint can present a bit of a problem when you bust those windows because when a window does not have window tint on it and you break it, it crumbles and it falls apart very easily. So like it turns to like little pebbles and just falls out. The window tint, that film, kind of keeps it all together. Now, it can fall out of place and fall in one big lump, or it can crack and shatter, and it kind of stays in place a little bit, and you may have like a chunk missing here, but the rest of the window is kind of sitting in place because it's being held together by that film. So there are some complications that can be created with tinted windows. You just have to use, if you're using beanbags to punch them, you just have to use multiple rounds to punch through it. And then when you get closer, you may have to rake the window. Take your baton out and just rake along all the edges of the window frame and knock all those loose pieces out. Now that's only going to be useful for the side windows and some rear windows. the front windshield is not in any way like side windows, you're not going to be able to rake and break the front windshield because the front windshield is glass, laminate glass. You'll actually have to use a cutting tool to cut through that front windshield. So it's designed a whole lot different. But your side windows, they break pretty easily, and even if there's film on it, like I said, you can take a simple baton and just trace along the edge of the window frame with that baton and knock all that stuff loose, and then you can freely fire tasers into there and fire other things into there that you need to get a resolution with less lethal. So it wasn't until he drove forward and into the front wall of this pizza place that this officer decided to use lethal force. And I think that's appropriate because this guy is in a weapon, essentially. He's in a vehicle. It's several hundred pounds heavy, and it can run a person over and seriously physically injure them and or kill them. So this officer is acting in the protection of the people who are inside this building because he could very easily drive through the front of it and drive someone over. So he is shooting to stop the threat that is presented to these other people here. So I have no problem with him shooting through this windshield, trying to shoot the driver to stop him from going forward any further.
Multiple officers shot their duty weapons.
Hands up! Hands up, police!
So I talked about the minivan having ample amount of room, and you can see back here that they got a little bit of gear back here. So they got another shotgun back here. I'm going to say this is most likely a lethal shotgun, or it's a shotgun that is used for breaching doors. It doesn't have any color on it. Of course, the less lethal shotgun this guy's holding has an orange stock. That's how most less lethal shotguns are marked. They've got different color stocks and pumps on them. Sometimes they're orange, sometimes they're red, sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they're green. There's usually a bright color on them to let everyone know this is a less lethal weapon. Don't put live ammo in it because these less lethal shotguns can actually feed an actual buckshot into it. So you don't want to pick up a shotgun that people have been feeding live buckshot through and it just creates that opportunity for a mishap to happen. So anyway, we see this other shotgun here. We see a breaching tool right here. This looks like a Halligan tool kind of thing. This is probably going to be a night vision pouch or something. It could be a medical pouch or something like that. Looks like a canister here for a gas mask and some other stuff in the seat here. So a minivan, you can put a lot of stuff in the cargo area and with the people back there. So it does make for a really great strike vehicle. You can have some dudes in the back here. They've obviously removed the seat that was that would normally be right here. That way they could be in there and then just boom, pounce out these side doors and get to work really quick.
Car! Hands up! Back up the car! Get him with the beanbag! Hit him with the beanbag!
I don't know why that's funny, but he shoots the mirror.
Hit him with the beanbag! Hit him with
So pay attention to the side view mirror right here.
the beanbag!
Now he either completely missed and he hit the side view mirror, or he fired and that beanbag may have ricocheted off this side of the vehicle at the angle he was at and then hit the side view mirror.
Hit him with the beanbag! Hit him with the beanbag! Hit the light right here! Yeah, I'm getting on the other side! Reverse! Drop me back. Hit the window. Hit the back window.
Here's video from the other.
Hit the window. Hit the back window.
So he tries to fire, nothing happens. Tries to fire again, nothing happens. Tries to fire.
Here's video from the.
So there was some issues there with him trying to get this less lethal gun back into the fight. I think this is an indication that he just has not had a whole lot of time on this particular style of weapon. I would say that probably most likely the only time that he's fired this thing is for training purposes. His initial certification on the device, and then doing recertification on it. And recertification could be a year or 2 years after your initial certification. So I don't think that he's probably had any practice on his own in between those mandated training times. If you don't do any practice in between your mandated qualification times, and there's a long gap of time in between those qualification times, that's not good. You need to be doing some practice in between those long times, because skills are perishable, especially stuff like this. If you don't use this stuff on a regular basis, the controls and everything, I mean, the controls on a shotgun are way different than the controls on a rifle. So if you're more used to doing a rifle and everything, that's what your body's used to. Trying to go to the controls of something like this, it's just something way different. So those are things you got to keep your skills up with. These skills are perishable. So I just don't think he's had a whole lot of trigger time on this, and that's why you see him fumble and not get this gun into the fight as quickly as he could have. Now, when he rolled forward, I don't know if he thought that he was going to go in this little space right here. I don't know if he could make it through there. I think maybe what was happening was he was wanting to gain some distance to try and back up, and then he was trying to navigate over this curb, and he just probably hit the accelerator a little too hard than what he wanted, and the vehicle lurched forward into the wall. I don't know if he actually thought that driving into this front wall would do anything and he'd be able to drive through the building, jump out of the vehicle, and go out the back. I don't think he was probably thinking that. I think this was more or less an accident. He could have, like I said, be thinking that he could go forward and back out of this way and bypass them completely, or maybe he thought that he was going to be able to make it in between this space right here and where this fence is. But you see this vehicle right here coming in to close that gap, because they must be thinking that he could have also gone through there as well.
Here's video from the other beanbag officer's body-worn camera. Here's video from the other beanbag officer's body-worn camera.
So he fires 3 rounds and then he's empty. Shotguns can obviously hold more than just 3 rounds, so why he didn't have any more than 3 rounds in there, don't really know. But he dumps those 3 rounds into it, and then he has to go into reload. So that, coupled with the fact that old dude over there was having some issues getting his gun back into the fight to be able to fire again, meant that there was a decreased amount of time in some of these less lethal projectiles being utilized to break out the windows on this vehicle so that they could use more less lethal to get into the vehicle.
Here is surveillance video from inside the restaurant as the vehicle breaks through the front door. 3 employees and 1 customer were inside at the time. None of them were injured. McKinney stopped moving his vehicle, and after a short time...
So yeah, this is a pretty small space. I don't know. I just don't see that vehicle making it through there.
...exited his vehicle. He was taken to the hospital and treated for gunshot wounds. Kevin McKinney faces multiple charges.
Back it up some more. Go back, see this other part. All right. So we see this guy with a silencer. The other officer, his rifle has a silencer, and I think the one over there on the left has a silencer on their rifle as well, but I couldn't tell very well. Silencers are a good thing. Now, when you say silencer, there's a lot of people who don't understand what a silencer is. They may know what it, or they think they know what it is, and they don't understand it completely. A lot of people get their facts and information from Hollywood, what they see in the movies and the TV shows they think is real. And Hollywood has done a very big, huge disservice to silencers. They do not accurately represent how they work. They give the illusion that they work a lot better than what they do. People actually literally think that a silencer really actually silences the gun to where it's almost like a mouse farting, or it's like, you know, the James Bond movies where it goes choo choo choo, like super quiet, right? They don't do that. Actually, the word silencer for them is even misleading as well. But silencer is the legal definition for them. Silencer was what the inventor had on the patent for it. But silencer, it's kind of like an oxymoron. It just doesn't fit very well. A lot of people use the word suppressor, and that is a more accurate word, I guess you could say, to describe what these devices are. They just suppress the sound. They do not silence it. But silencer is the legal name for these devices. But that's what they do. They suppress the sound. They're like a muffler for the gun. So your car has a muffler on it. Without that muffler, it's a loud motherfucker. Like, it is super loud. It's obnoxiously loud. The muffler just makes it comfortable to operate in and makes it polite, I guess you could say. Makes it more bearable for other people to be around. And that's what these do. It makes it bearable for other people to be around it when this gun is being used. So the biggest pro to the silencers is it suppresses the report of the rifle fire down to a sound decibel that is hearing safe. And that hearing safe is good for both the short term and long term. So what do I mean by that? Long-term hearing. So if you're around loud noises that are above a certain decibel that is capable of causing hearing damage, then long-term down the road, your hearing is not going to be the same as it was before that exposure to that loud noise. It's hearing damage. So, for example, me, I have hearing damage. I have to say, huh? What? What'd you say? Say it one more time. I couldn't hear you. One more time. One more time. That happens a lot in my life because of repeated exposures to harmful noise. That fucking sucks. Like, I hate not being able to hear what people say clearly. And there's times, I'm pretty sure there's probably times someone has made some kind of fucking disrespectful comment to me, and I simply just could not hear it. And, you know, then they get this misconception of like, oh, I just fucking called him this name and he didn't do anything about it. He's a bitch. So that in itself can present a problem. Give someone this false confidence that they can say where the hell they want, and then they amp it up a little bit more. But usually it boils down to not being able to enjoy normal conversations with people because it's hard to hear sometimes. Like I'm still having to ask, like, hey, say that again. So the silencers help protect your hearing in the long term. That way you don't have to keep saying huh, what. But in the short term, in the fight itself, it prevents you from having the ringing ears that prevent you from being able to effectively communicate with people. So if you've been around rifle fire without hearing protection on and it not having a silencer on, then you know what I'm talking about. Like, that fucking shit will make your ears ring. If you're indoors, if you are indoors and you shoot a gun, yeah, your ears are going to be ringing, and trying to listen to radio communications when your ears are going beep, or hearing people talk, that can be difficult. So the silencer reduces that. You don't have that loud ass fucking ringing noise in your ear. You can hear the radio traffic. You can hear other people talking. It just allows you to be a more effective, at communicating. And when it comes to small unit tactics, those who can shoot, move, and communicate are the ones who typically win. If you can communicate and do all those things, you have a higher advantage over your adversaries. If you can't communicate well in a small unit tactic, then you're not going to do very well in most cases. So it really helps out with the communications, and that's the biggest pro for it. Of course, there's some other pros to it. That's more or less when you start getting into night shooting with night vision and everything. The silencers do really significantly help reduce the muzzle signature, so that your nods don't flare out and you're not creating that much of a signature on your end if people are looking towards where you're at and where you're shooting from. But the biggest thing that makes them so nice is the hearing protection, because it takes that loud fucking rifle report and brings it down. Now, it's still loud. It's deemed to be hearing safe, but it's still loud. And for training purposes, I think you should still probably wear hearing protection when you're utilizing silencers, because it is still loud enough that I think that you should be wearing it, even though they say it's hearing safe. It's still a pretty loud noise. And again, that's why a lot of people, they just don't understand how these things work. They think a silencer makes it really quiet, and it really don't. Even pistol caliber stuff is still pretty loud. To me, I think pistol caliber stuff kind of sounds like, when it's silenced, sounds kind of like nail guns or paintball guns. It just has that loud kind of pneumatic like sound to it. You can still hear that a good distance away, but it's certainly not silent. The only way you can get anything truly silent is taking a .22 long rifle and locking the action up. So you take like a .22, a Ruger Mark II, a .22, and you lock that bolt on there, or that slide. That can be pretty silent. Or a .22, long rifle, or a .22, like 10-22 or something, and you can lock that bolt on there. Then you can get a really pretty silent weapon out of that. There's still going to be some noise involved with that, but that's probably the only movie-like silence that you can get out of a gun. Anything above that, it's making noise. Like, it's very noticeable noise. Governments can more easily get silencers because they don't have a bunch of red tape bullshit to go through. So agencies can get these things. Unfortunately, when it comes to agencies getting these things, it seems to be that your special cops are the ones who get them. So like SWAT teams are most likely the ones to get the silencers versus all the patrol guys. And that's a lot of that has to do with cost. Because these silencers, they cost about the same as a gun, or maybe the cost of two guns. Some are cheap, some are more expensive. So there's that finance thing. Police departments don't have money trees. They got limited budgets, and especially for these agencies that are having to deal with, the defund movement, they have a lot less money than what they had to begin with. So that's an issue. And when you have an agency that has like 200 officers or something like that, it can be pretty expensive to equip all those patrol officers with silencers. But it's not that much of a financial burden to equip the 15 to 20 SWAT team officers with silencers. So unfortunately, it is mostly special units that have these, but you do see out there some agencies having patrol rifles with silencers on them, and I think that's great. I just wish that more places would do that. Unfortunately, you also have bad leadership in place, or maybe not so much bad leadership, but uneducated and stuck in their ways kind of leadership that just won't embrace the idea of getting silencers. So you may have some people who they're completely ignorant to these things. They don't understand how they work, what the pros to them are, and they may be thinking, well, we don't need those things. Or they may be thinking that, we're not going to entertain that. Those things are impossible to get. They may be thinking that because they just don't really know what that process is. Or they may be having a mindset of, silencers are used by assassins, and we don't want the public to think we're assassins, do we? I mean, they already, think we're, murderers. They already think we go out and kill people of color for no reason. Why do we need to get silencers? They're going to think very negatively of us on top of what they already think of us already. So there's some who don't want to get them because they think it's going to make them look bad. Because there's some people who think that silencers are only used by, assassins and stuff like that. And so when you got like sheriffs who are worried about being reelected, or you got city police chiefs who are worried about being replaced by someone who would be more fitting of their local government's liberal agenda, they don't want to do things that the liberals see as scary. Liberals see silencers as scary things because those are used by assassins. Why do you need a silent gun? Are you going to be shooting from the shadows and no one else know that you're shooting? You're trying to do stuff secretly? So that's a problem in some places as well. Now, citizens can also own these things, but there's a little bit more red tape involved. These things are regulated by the same laws that regulate machine guns, the National Firearms Act. So these things are known as NFA items. And as a citizen, if you want to own a silencer, you can go to a place where they sell them. Like, let's say a gun shop sells silencers. You can go to a gun shop. I want to buy a silencer. Okay, cool. Here's some paperwork. Fill this out. Here's a kiosk. Go do your fingerprints. Yada, yada, yada. Give us your money. You do all that paperwork. You do all the fingerprints. You take your photo there on that kiosk, and you give them the money for that silencer. You do not get to go home with that silencer. That silencer stays there at that gun shop. All your paperwork goes to the ATF and the FBI, and they do background checks. And the background check in and of itself doesn't take long at all. But the paperwork sits there with the ATF for a very long time. There have been some people who got really lucky and got their paperwork approved within 90 days. Majority of everyone else is waiting almost a year or more to have their paperwork processed and approved. So you go in to a gun shop today and you have a clean background, like you've never got a fucking speeding ticket or nothing, never been to court. The only time you've been to the courthouse is to get your damn driver's license or pay for your license plate. Like no criminal background whatsoever. You got the most unique name that could never match someone else who's had a criminal background. You're still going to be waiting a long ass time to get the silencer. You'll be waiting probably a year or more to be given the green light to take it home with you. That's bullshit. It does not take that long to do a background check. You can go get a passport, and they do a very in-depth background check for your passport, and it does not take that long at all. So it's bullshit what we have to go through to own these kind of things. This is pure harassment by the government, and it's unconstitutional in my opinion. But anyway, you can own these things. You just have to pay a $200 tax stamp to the government for this NFA item, and then of course pay the gun shop the price of the silencer and wait a really long time to get it. Now, while you're waiting to get this thing, you can go play with it at the gun shop. People refer to this as NFA jail. So while you're waiting to get possession of your silencer, it sits at the gun shop, and that's known as NFA jail. And some places, the gun shops have a gun range, and people call this having conjugal visits with your silencer. So you can actually go to the gun shop, play with your silencer, shoot it at the gun range, and then give it back to the dealer, and they put it back in the safe until the ATF says that you can take that thing home with you. A lot of bullshit. It really is. There was an attempt to pass some legislation a few years back. It was a Hearing Safe Act, I think, something like that. Unfortunately, during that time frame, there was some crazy person who shot some people, and I think that they were alleged to have a silencer on their gun, and so these politicians backed off on it and were not backing it anymore. If it were not for that one incident occurring, I think there was enough traction to where that law could have been passed. And personally, aside from, just being a gun person, I don't understand why. Well, I kind of understand why, but logically, it doesn't make sense that these things need to be regulated like machine guns, because they're not completely silent at all. They're just mufflers, essentially. They're just mufflers on a gun, and it makes more sense to have them to protect your hearing, right? Reduce overall healthcare costs in the nation for hearing problems, and noise pollution. So there are places across the country where people complain about shooting ranges. The shooting range has been there for years. Neighborhoods get built up around it. Now people complain about the gun noise. Out in the county, people shoot their guns. Neighbors nearby complain about it. If silencers were more easily attainable, then, people would be able to not complain so much about those loud noises and whatnot. But it's whatever.
Out the window. Shoot the back window.
So this guy had been involved in multiple things in multiple states. And as I said before, I don't think those were probably his only one and done deals and being involved in the criminal justice system. I'd say he's probably had an extensive list of things that he's done up until this point. And that is a failure of the criminal justice system, because there are too many persistent offenders and too many violent offenders who are given way too many second chances, and they end up going out and victimizing more and more people. They do not need to be walking around with us. They do not need to be out and about in society when they have proven that they are a danger, a clear and present danger to society. People like this need to be locked up for a long time, if not indefinitely. Vicious animals, we understand that if a dog is vicious, that one of two things needs to happen to a vicious dog. One, that vicious dog needs to be ordered to be kept in a kennel and locked up at all times and always be on a leash, or it be destroyed. Everyone all across the world understands these concepts. That's why any place you go in the country, there are laws on vicious dogs, and those are one of the two options that happen. Either you are court ordered to always keep that dog locked up and it's always on a leash, or the court orders it to be destroyed. Now, when it comes to humans who are vicious, somehow we become fucking retarded and are like, oh, well, this is a vicious person. Let's let him out. Let's let him go walk around with everyone else and be vicious to them. So that's a problem. Our society needs to come to terms. We need to come together and say that we need to reevaluate how we deal with these vicious people. And we need to come up with two solutions. Do one or the other. And if we're going to keep them locked up, then we need to keep them locked up. We don't need to keep them locked in for a couple months and be like, all right, buddy, you're rehabilitated. Get on out of here. Like, we don't do that with dogs. We don't keep the dog in the dog pound for 6 months and be like, all right, Cujo, did you learn your lesson? All right, go out, be a good boy. No, that shit don't fucking happen. Because we know the vicious dog cannot be rehabilitated. Same with humans. Vicious humans cannot be rehabilitated. So, 2 options there. That's about it. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.